Okay, so now, oh, it's still, well, we'll just keep going until you tell me there's a problem. If you see that there's a problem, if you can't hear me, please drop a comment. But since there are no I can't hear you comments, I think we'll be okay. Okay, so auditory. So we did visual, auditory. Third one, kinesthetic. Kinesthetic. You may have never heard that before. Kinesthetic is your child likes learning by doing and relies on the sense of touch or tactile. And like I said, we'll come back to all of these more individually. Linguistic, your child depends on speech and writing for comprehension. So that's very common, a lot of kids. Um, Logical, your child takes a logical approach to learning, preferring patterns and systems. Solitary, your child learns well alone and even teach themselves some materials. So if you've got a child that is solitary, you don't have to worry. You'll be good. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Okay. That's better. So again, if you're having any sound issues, please let me know because I'm not watching the show while I'm doing it. So give me a heads up. Social. Your child learns well with others. So there are 7 learning styles. And you may say, well, my child might fit into a bunch of those. And that's absolutely true. Children can be multidisciplinary in their learning styles. And it will all be up to your observation of them and your interaction with them in order to know what to do with them. This will also help you with what types of materials to provide for your children to learn. And if you've got children at different ages, different levels, you're learning in different ways, it can seem daunting, but it's really not. A little history, the way things are in the system is it's one way of learning, right? With one set of rules or curriculum to meet everybody's needs, which is why it doesn't work. It's very um, and it does, some people do really well with it, but when it's so generalized, it's hard to keep the information in your head. So when you are doing things one way, it's almost impossible. Um, so you may have to try different things. So I'm going to flip over to another. There's a couple of other places that show, what's your teaching style. You may be trying to teach a kinesthetic learner in an academic way, and it's just not working. And you're butting heads, you're arguing, you're getting, you know, your child's being oppositional or frustrated. And you need to look for those signs so that you can switch, because what we want them to do, you can always try and force your children to do something that you want them to do. But how well is it going to work? Not really. And I think all parents know that. So parents who pay attention to their kids, play with them a lot, communicate with them a lot, will find out what their learning styles are and be able to adapt their teaching styles. I had to adapt my teaching style for one of my oldest child. I was an absolute radical unschooler. I wanted them to learn everything naturally. And my oldest daughter, my first time homeschooling, she's an academic. She was if I go back to the list here, she was a multidisciplinary learner. She was mostly linguistic and logical. So she would she would just soak up every workbook. She wanted to learn everything. She went to a German language class at 4 years old. Now, at 4 years old, already she already knew the alphabet. She knew the sounds of the letters. She was already doing grade 1 to 4 level subjects and activities. So she was super advanced, not genius. I'm not going to say that. She wasn't better than any other child. She just had an affinity for language, for understanding things, and she did it naturally. So when they put her um, in the kindergarten classroom with the other kids her age to learn German. After the third week, she didn't want to go anymore. And I said, why don't you want to go? And she said, well, all they do is play. I don't learn anything there. So she was not the type of kid that wanted to play. She wanted to grab that information and look at it from every angle and understand it and move forward. So we were able to help her do that. It was hard for me because I'm like, let's go look at go to the pond down the street and collect frogs. And while she found that okay, she would rather be head in a book. So that's where the solitary part of her um, learning style, a multidimensional learning style came in as well. So she could read a book by the time she was 6 or 7. She would read a book in about 3 hours, like a chapter book that, a kid's chapter book. Those Princess Diaries or Royal Diaries, boom, she would be through them. At 10, she read the Iliad. And yeah, so it was a real challenge to find her appropriate reading materials for her age level, emotionally appropriate things. So we went back to classics like Nancy Drew and classic books. So it was a very challenging thing to do. So independently, so let's go through these one at a time. Visual. Um, the visual side of things is where they appreciate the most. So if they can watch a video on something and using, like they're suggesting here, make the use of timelines and maps, have them draw their own maps. Because if they're doing something physically, which is the kinesthetic, because it kind of blends in. If they're doing a drawing themselves of, let's say, map out their bedroom, like, and they do that visually, then that is something that will stick in their heads and they'll remember that forever. And those types of things, you may think, oh, they're just drawing their bedroom, but as they get older and you introduce the measurements and things like that, you can also teach them where that comes from. Why do we need to measure? Well, if you're going to be redecorating the bedroom, let's say, you might need to know how many rolls of trim you need, or how many rolls of wallpaper you need, or how many gallons of paint you're going to need. And so that would not come from a workbook, but it could be for a visual learner that they would need to see that in writing or in a video. Um, lots of graphics, visuals, animations. Depending on the age of the child, I've seen a lot of technical of curriculum books that come in the mail, and there happened to be a grade 5 curriculum book and a grade 10 curriculum book for the same topic. Okay, it was exactly the same material, and one was presented in a way for younger children, and one was presented in a way for older children. So um, the younger one had animation or cartoon pictures, and the grade 10 version had um, had photographs. The text font was bigger in the younger age group material and smaller with smaller spaces in between. They were really technical differences, but exactly the same material, one for grade 5, one for grade 10. So in the grade 5 book, instead, they had a story at the beginning, and it was called A Story. And then at the beginning of the grade 10 book, it said A Fable, because they knew that hopefully the older kids would know what a fable is. So even though it's exactly the same material, they presented it in different ways to try to reach the different demographics. Auditory. There are some kids that just can't retain things in their head, and yet there are things that if you're listening to, there are times when if you're listening to a radio station or whatever, and 3 hours later your child starts repeating what they've heard, or sing-songing it, then you've got an auditory learner who you can um, it's okay if they have music in the background, because it actually helps them think. It helps them remember. It will jog different parts of their brain to stimulate the things that they're remembering. So those auditory, for new vocabulary words, reading them out loud. Let's see, as well as the definitions, trying to memorize information. Things like sing-songing different things that they want to memorize. And it may be something as simple as a, a recipe. If they're trying to memorize the recipe for making peanut butter cookies, they can make it into a song. A lot of us older people, and I'm aging myself terribly here, would be the um, grammar videos that we used to have growing up, and they would be on the TV. I'm trying to remember the name of them now. I had it so close on my head. If you remember what it is, write it down, because they were awesome. Conjunction junction. I remember conjunction junction. What's your function? Yeah. So we had lots of fun auditory things that helped us learn different different things. Um, Now, my my experience is that kids will use their own techniques to memorize things. It's not necessary that you're trying to get them to memorize things. I mean, people think about memorizing with um, the times tables and things like that. But if you're doing things like, oh yeah, and Bill on the Capitol Hill, yeah, exactly. And I know it's on YouTube. You can always get them. Um, and so with with the auditory function, then you can see when your child is sing-songing to themselves. And when I'm just going to take a sip here and try to get that track back. Um, oh, it's gone. It'll come back. Science experiments. Experiments are the best. Actually trying things out, doing things. Uh, that's in the kinesthetic, but that also stretches into the auditory because when you're listening to, let's say, instructions, you can find out, is your child really listening to you? If they're not really listening to you, try to write them down. If your child is a very visual learner, you might need to do diagrams. It's a lot of what we know now because, it's not usually a word that is on the ladies' room or the men's washroom. It's usually a picture of a woman and a picture of a man, so very pictographic. Um, but also, um, when we get to learn how our kids are learning, we can employ those things to help them best. So, moving on to the kinesthetic style, um, physical objects are the best. Tactile, really let them work with the things that they're doing. Like I said about mapping the bedroom, their own bedroom, and that turning into being able to learn how to get enough paint or wallpaper or whatever. Um, that's and yes, June is saying, um, Bill Nye has some great videos online. There are tons of videos. I got to tell you, 10 years ago, my kids decided to mummify a Barbie doll. And so we just got a basic outline. It's not a perfect mummification thing. They were only 10 years old, and these are my younger kids. And so we did a slide video show of how to mummify a Barbie doll. Well, I went back to it after 10 years of it being up. I had no clue how many people had watched it. I had so many comments. I've got over 1,000 comments on this video of how to mummify a Barbie doll, and they're correcting my mistakes and saying that their classroom watched it in their social sciences class, and it's just really bizarre that, my kids, we took some pictures, we put them together in a slideshow, we put it up on YouTube, not thinking anybody would ever see it. And there you go. So I do plan on doing an upgrade now. But if you want to do an upgrade, it's something that would really be appreciated on YouTube because, yeah, mine wasn't perfect. And that's okay. So moving along to fly, logical. Your child takes a logical approach to learning. Preferring patterns and systems. Well, much like the visual learner, a logical learner will be with those patterns and systems. And those are, you don't need fancy materials. You don't need online things. Um, Before the internet ever existed, we had intelligent learning people who learned everything from all sorts of ways. So whether it's creating a clock out of a paper plate and some markers, or putting push pins through and putting, the hands in, and then going to the times tables, because that is the 5 times tables. I remember when I was an adult and it clicked that, and I was homeschooling my kids, and suddenly somebody said, "Well, use the clock. It's by fives." I'm like, "What?" I was this many years old when I learned that it was 7 times 5, it was 35. I knew that when the hand was at the 7, it was 35 minutes. Why did I never think of that? So there are things that you might not know that you're going to find out, and that's okay. You don't have to know everything or every style to help your kids learn. So, in the logical part, that can also be legalistic. My oldest daughter was very legalistic, and so was my youngest. I tell you, if there was a way to out talk or say, contradict me in some way or correct me in some way. Um, it was my legalistic daughters who said, you know what? I think this is a better way, and it'll be faster. And lo and behold, they were. My husband teaches Python coding for the internet and the computers, and he challenges his students who are all different ages because he runs specialized classes for he had a 9-year-old girl in his class and a 17-year-old boy and all sorts of ages in between, and they were all doing the same coding class. They were all equivalently able to work on it because it was something they wanted to do. So when he challenged those kids, okay, here's the basic scenario. This is how to do it with 2 things. If you can do it with more things, come and show me and I'll give you a chocolate bar. And within a minute, one of those other kids had come up to the front and said, yeah, I got it. Now, this was not in a school situation, of course, because they were all different ages. And within 2 minutes, a 13-year-old had done more than he had suggested and not taught them, but she got the idea of it. So she was logical thinking about it. So I'm going to put this link into the comments because I think it's a very simple way to understand what they are. So moving into the solitary. If your child is not a social bunny and they just want to take a book and squirrel away in a corner and read their book, that's fine. They're learning. You might not know exactly what they're learning, but that's okay for them to be able to do that. Just gonna check something here. Aha. Okay. So basically, the styles are important. And like I said from the beginning, getting to know your kids, doing things with them, and I'm going to explain how to do that in a moment when we finish here. So solitary, give them time to process new materials. Solitary can also be attributed to kids who have issues or challenges with transitions. I had a child in my care who could not transition really quickly from one thing to another. It was all, impossible, and it would always mean a meltdown or anything that wasn't planned ahead. If she didn't have a structure and a plan and know what was happening, if it was any deviation from the plan, she would have a meltdown. So it was truly a difficult thing. So, for instance, before we were homeschooling her, she was at school, and if there was a substitute teacher, forget it. She was gone. She could not function. Um, so when you're at home and you have a child that just, you know, doesn't seem to want to do any of the social stuff, don't worry. They'll find a way to be social. Einstein was not a social bunny. He hated being anywhere but alone. And by the way, he did not know how to make coffee either. So Einstein knew a lot, but he couldn't manage making coffee. Okay, so getting on to the 7th one there, social. Your child learns well with others. Role playing is a wonderful technique for social learners as it requires collaboration and discussing concepts with others. I'm going to show you an excellent source for role playing education at home. A lot of unschoolers like role playing. A lot of teenagers love role playing. So let's go to this adventures.school. And I'm going to put that in, where'd it go? Adventures.school. This is a fabulous option, if I've done that correctly. And I'm going to bring this into the stream. And you are absolutely going to love this. Epic interactive stories. So here we have the School of Incredible Adventures, and it is adventures.school. Our adventures are designed for heroes aged 7 to 10, but if you sign up as a group of children of all ages, including parents, are welcome. So, adventure methodology. Let's watch this video, and I'm going to play it in the stream. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, let's copy that, because you're not going to hear the sound from it. Hold on a second. Okay, stop. Okay, this I have to do a different way. So let me get the share code here, copy that, put it in. I'm gonna remove this from the screen because I have a different way of doing this. No, not this, this. Okay, thanks for being patient with me. Here's the link. And okay, here we go. And I'm going to press play.
I want to tell you the story of Emilia. In mid-March 2020, Emilia started going to school from home. It didn't take long before she became bored, and her attention started to drift during lessons. Emilia's parents were frustrated as well. Working from home while having a bored 9-year-old in the house wasn't easy. Then, Emilia discovered something wonderful. A new way of learning, where a small group of kids took part in interactive storytelling lessons done via Zoom. Each session, a master storyteller would take the small group of participants through an epic adventure, with each of them controlling one of the main characters of the story. To Emilia, it was kind of like listening to an audiobook, but where she as a reader got to decide part of what happened. And suddenly, learning became fun for her. So far, Emilia had learned about math while being on a pirate adventure, and about geography in a 1910 story inspired by Jules Verne. And for her next adventure, she proudly told her parents she was going to be a starship captain. They discovered that the concept was called the adventure methodology, and that it was spreading around Europe. Apparently, it had been created during something called the EU versus Virus Hackathon by a group of extraordinary experience designers. They called it the next level of audiobooks. Emilia's parents called it a good way to learn, and also several hours where we can work in peace. They found some research online that said that humans actually learn quite well through stories. But what really impressed them was the evening when Emilia came and said, "Mom and Dad, can you help me find out more about geography?" She'd never cared about geography before, but it was like someone had sparked the fire of self-learning within their daughter. And isn't that the true goal of education? Not just teaching us things, but allowing us to learn by ourselves.
So, isn't that awesome? So, the link is in the comments. Please visit that site to take a look at it, because it's great for kids of all ages and parents to do things together, especially if they're social learners. Role-playing adventures are fabulous. If you have only one child, allow them to bounce ideas off you and turn leading into a less formal discussions. Work with them on projects and experiments. There are so many ways. It doesn't have to be over the internet, but it can be. You know that there are a ton of different options. And especially the different groups that are on Facebook and Reddit, and so many on Twitter and all the different social media platforms. But traditionally too, being able to connect with other people, you might start on a Facebook group and then meet up with people. And I understand that's still scary for a lot of people, because we're kind of seeing an increase now. So the learning style for your child is super, super important. And like I said, you're probably going to find out that they have multiple learning styles, which is totally normal. So there's another website here, which I'm going to bring up and put the link in the comments, because here you can, let me get this here. It's a quiz. So you can take this quiz to decipher, a quiz for parents to help them identify. That was my cat. Thank you for knocking everything down live. Learning style quiz for parents to help them identify their child's unique learning style. So go to that link, take a look at it, and see, how you can help your child learn. And if you're working, this is the way to go. If you're working from home, or if you have to work outside the home, sometimes you can involve your children in your work. There's a great group on Facebook for people who work full-time and homeschool. Super amount of support. And so you can get your kids engaged with something they really love, and they will be involved in it while you have time to do some work. Okay, I'm gonna see about the next step here. Okay, there's a whole lot more online about the different learning styles. Before I ever knew about learning styles, I just wanted to get to know. I mean, I knew my daughter, but even when she was born, I said, people thought I was crazy, which may be true. I said, to this little infant in my hands, I said, I can't wait till she speaks so I can find out who she is, because I won't know who she is until she starts telling me how she's thinking, what she's thinking. She's not just a carbon copy of me at all. She's an individual person. So when she tells me what she thinks, how she thinks, and which is one of the reasons why I love working with kids, is that first time their eyes go wide and they get something for the first time. They see something for the first time, and they get it. They really understand it right away. Sometimes that may take some time. They may not be ready for it yet. So, what I did in order to get to know my children better and the children I was working with was I researched a fantastic anthropologist named Birute Galdikas. And she had a template for her observing the orangutans that she was working with to learn about them and how they functioned with the other orangutans in their pod, in their family, and just to be an anthropologist and an observer. So, observing my children using this template, I was able to challenge them in ways that would help them progress, because nobody likes busy work. Nobody likes pages and pages and pages of the same thing. There was somebody on one of the groups this morning that that said, my daughter's breezed through, or my child's breezed through the first grade workbook, and she's in SK. And should I let her continue leveling up, or do I just keep giving her the busy work for the year? Because if she's going back into school, well, and it's an interesting question. Why would you want to stifle or not let your child learn what they can, when they can, and how they can? That's going to be what gives them the most natural love of learning. A lot of kids lose that when they go to school. So if you're unschooling and you see your children just naturally figure things out. So like one day going to the grocery store and you say, go get me 2 dozen eggs. And they come back and they say, I have 24 eggs for you. Well, you didn't tell them it was 24. I never taught my youngest daughter any math. My oldest daughter was a different thing altogether. She didn't want to learn math either. Frankly, I hate math. So I never taught my kids any math at all. But what I did do was allow learning opportunities to come up in our daily life. So, for instance, my daughter observed an older child playing a game on the computer. It was called Soak Your Sibling, and it was an algebra game where it had the X and Y axis, and it had your sibling at one spot and you at another spot, and you had to give the computer the directions, the X and Y axis of where your sibling was, so that a water balloon could go and splash them. So she loved that game so much and learned how to play it. She was 8 or 9 years old, and she's playing this Soak Your Sibling game. She never wanted to learn math. She had no interest in math. That algebra game gave her an interest in math. And that was when she asked and started doing more in math. So she went backwards, doing a more something that she wouldn't have been exposed to until high school was what drew her into loving math. My youngest daughter, as I said, was the one that just bounced numbers out of her head, but she also did puzzles upside down. She said it was too easy with the picture up. So, and this is like every child. My kids are not geniuses. They are just unique, like everybody else. Unique is normal. Yeah, that's unique is normal. Okay, so let's keep going here. Now, like I said, there's a lot of places online that you can look up learning styles. Um, Looking at the multidisciplinary things. So let's talk about kids with challenges. So special needs, that kind of thing. Um, if your child is um, needs a heavy jacket or a vest that for uh, it's the student I was working with was uh, um, dyslexic. I don't know the definition of that, but I should. But he had to wear a sandbag across his legs and a weighted vest for him to feel safe, grounded, and comfortable sitting to do anything, to paint, to color, to read, anything at all. So there were some challenges and some deviations that we had to make so that he could enjoy learning, um, and and be able to retain the information. Another challenging special situation was I had a deaf student who was a teenager and wanted to learn how to drive. So, I mean, while they provide that as an extracurricular thing from the schools, he was being unschooled uh, in a family where he is the only deaf person. And his brothers learned sign language and they talked to him a lot. His father, I don't think his father ever learned sign language. His mother did, um, but it was a challenge. So teaching him the um, the Ontario driver's manual in sign language was a challenge. Um, but there's so much available to support deaf and special needs kids, hard of hearing kids. Um, Another one was a young man who had Tourette's, and he had some serious challenges. He could not, also, in addition to the Tourette's, he could not feel pain. So he would injure himself on purpose. And oh, I'm gonna, that's one of my daughters and her baby calling me. Yay. All right. So I did find um, some other materials, and so I wanted to go into, like, no matter what challenge your child is facing, you can adapt. And if you're having trouble adapting, please reach out. There is the special needs homeschooling group on Facebook, and a lot of supports. There's building a better brain, with Lorraine Driscoll, and she's on a lot of our groups locally. And there is the Brain Fit Kids. I'll put both of those um, in the comments, because adapting to different learning styles is a challenge for a lot of parents when we think we know what we're supposed to do, but we don't, it's not working out. What we're trying to do is not working. So let's reach out to each other, help each other, be adaptable, be observant, be an anthropologist, get to know your subject animal, your children, and learn how they learn so that you can give them the tools that they need to thrive. I've got to tell you, the young man who who had Tourette's and would self-harm because he couldn't feel any pain, um, he is now a firefighter, and specifically an underwater firefighter. He is a very talented, very amazing young man who saves lives and is just brilliant. So there is no reason to allow perceived obstacles to prevent thriving. Okay, so yeah, reach out. We're here. And I think that's it for today. There is so much more about learning styles. If you have any questions, I will be jumping on a Zoom right after this. I'm going to put the Zoom in the comments so that if you want to join us to chat about specific things you wouldn't necessarily want to be public about, but don't mind a small group, I'm going to do that right now in the comments. I still have a few minutes. All right, here we go. And so this Zoom chat is for anybody who wants to continue the conversation here. Okay, open up. All right, and okay, I think should be able to just click on this and see. Oh, it didn't get the whole thing. There it is. Okay. Let me see if this is it. Okay. I'm gonna, whoop, where did it go? You all disappeared. It's okay, I'm gonna get you back. Okay. All right, there you are. Now, in the comments, hopefully, this is the right link. Let me know if this works for you, because I'm going to join this chat right now, and then I'm going to close the video, the live video. So I want to open up that Zoom so that people can join me there. There we go. It's almost there. Thank you for bearing with me, and thank you for joining me today. And this is a place where you can share your successes, your challenges, anything that that you want to share about your journey with home educating. So I look forward to seeing you in the Zoom chat after this video, after this live feed. And let's see if there's any other comments. So that Zoom should take you to that Zoom link should take you to the Zoom meeting. And I hope to chat with you right after the show. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. And I'd love your feedback on what you think about your what I'm doing, what we're talking about, the guests that we've had. Please go back and watch the other videos. I've had some tremendous guests, and we want to help everybody do the best for their kids. So enjoy your day and your weekend. Have a great one. Bye for now.